Anyone who's been a stepping stone for an ex knows how sickening it feels. You pay her debts, you endure the hard times with her, and then at your lowest, you're dumped with a "you're not good enough for me." Worse, she and her new man treat you like a joke to be trampled on. But at our college reunion, I flipped the script and turned the entire exclusive Summit Club into my own courtroom. That bottle of wine she was so proud of, that very bill, became the final straw before her wealthy new family cast her out. She even desperately tried to swipe a card her husband had already frozen, all to save face in front of our snobby classmates. The most reckless gamble of her life wasn't marrying an heir. It was betting my heart and losing, never imagining I'd one day come to collect with interest. For years after she ruthlessly dumped me, I kept to myself. Then, at a college reunion over the holidays, I ran into her in the main hall, Candy Evans. We had all just settled in when someone suggested a game of truth or dare. Candy, of course, went first. She drew a truth card. The card read, "In your last relationship, what was the best decision you made?" Her eyes flickered toward me, the corner of her mouth curling into a smug smile. "Getting my ex to pay off my $100,000 in debt," she announced, "and then dumping him as soon as I met someone wealthy and landed on my feet." The private room exploded with laughter. Everyone expected me to storm out, to slam the door in a fit of rage. I didn't. I just offered a small smile and waved my hand, signaling for the game to go on. When my turn came, the question was, "In your last relationship, did you hide anything from your partner?" "Yes," I said. "What was it?" "That I'm the son of the richest man in the country." After a moment of stunned silence, the room erupted in a roar of laughter even louder than before. "Lucas, you've been watching too many of those billionaire romance TikToks on your delivery runs?" Someone jeered. "You don't really think you're some hotshot CEO, do you?" Another guy piled on. "Dude, take some advice. Drop the act. You didn't even bother to change out of your work clothes." I glanced down at my pale yellow Armani windbreaker and the custom AGV helmet on the chair beside me. He had a point. At a quick glance, it did kind of resemble a delivery guy's uniform. I was about to explain, but Candy's sharp, mocking voice cut through the noise. "Lucas, it's been 4 years. Why are you still so obsessed with putting on a show?" She swirled the wine in her glass, adding slowly, "This is a reunion. We're all here to catch up as friends. There's no need to constantly bring up money." She looked right at me. "You should try being genuine for a change, instead of living in a fantasy world." I leaned back in my chair, my expression calm as I met her gaze. My voice was quiet but steady. I wasn't lying. I really am the son of the richest man in the country. I paused, then added, "If it wasn't for me, do you honestly think any of you could have booked the Imperial Suite at the Summit Club?" To be honest, I hadn't wanted to come to this reunion at all. I had no desire to see Candy, and I didn't feel like I belonged in the same world as these people anymore. Forcing a get-together like this felt completely pointless. But our old class president had called me nearly 30 times, begging me to show up and swearing that Candy wouldn't be there. He promised it would be a casual dinner, no posturing, just old friends catching up. So much for that. Not only did Candy show up, but she was acting like the main character in her own movie. A gold digger who slept her way to the top, now posing as some high society debutante. It was pathetic, but this fake socialite wouldn't let it go. "Lucas, even when you lie, you should try to make it believable," she said, lifting her chin in a cold sneer. "My fiancé booked this Imperial Suite with his VIP account. It has absolutely nothing to do with you." Her eyes deliberately raked over my clothes. "Look at you, dressed like you're on a delivery run, right down to those driving loafers. If you weren't with us tonight, do you honestly think you'd have a right to even set foot in a place like this?" Candy's words triggered another wave of sycophantic laughter. The looks I got from around the table shifted from playful teasing to undisguised contempt. I just gave a lazy wave of my hand, a cold smirk playing on my lips. "So, you're saying I'm lucky to be here, that I'm riding your coattails?" Candy sneered and gestured toward the lavish spread of seafood and fine dishes covering the table. "What do you think?" she said. "Without me, do you really think you'd be sitting here eating lobster and abalone? And this Pappy Van Winkle? Could you ever afford a bottle like this on your own? I slowly lifted my head, the faintest trace of a smile on my lips. Candy, you really are clueless, aren't you? My voice was quiet, but every word was clear. At my home, this is what we serve the staff for their meals. I wouldn't even bother picking up my fork for it. The moment I said it, the room erupted in a fresh wave of mockery. Lucas, can you please stop the act? Someone jeered. A guy like you wouldn't have even made it past the front gate without Candy. Seriously, the class president added with a snide tone. If Candy hadn't specifically asked for you to be invited, I wouldn't have even bothered calling. Now, come on, down 3 shots as an apology to Candy. At least then you can say you've had some of this Pappy Van Winkle. The taunts flew at me from every direction, but I let them bounce right off. I wasn't bothered because every word I'd spoken was the absolute truth. If I wasn't trying to spare these people's fragile egos, if I wasn't trying to avoid publicly humiliating them, I would have laid my cards on the table right then and there. The entire Summit Club belongs to me. Seeing me sitting there, composed and silent, Candy sauntered over, swirling a glass of red wine. Do you know why I dumped you? She asked, looking down at me with an air of superiority. It's because when you have nothing, you shouldn't pretend you have everything. She pushed the glass toward me. Drink this, she commanded, and we can pretend none of this ever happened. I met her gaze, then slowly rose to my feet until we were eye to eye. Candy, I was trying to let you save a little face, I said quietly. Did you really think I'm the same broke kid from 4 years ago, the one who would have done anything for you? With that, I turned and called toward the door. Waiter, bring me the wine list. My eyes swept across the room. Everything tonight, put on my account. The words were barely out of my mouth when the door swung open. A man in a perfectly tailored suit strode in and came to a respectful stop right in front of me. It was Mr. Thompson, the general manager of the Summit Club. I'd met him once when I booked the suite. My gaze remained fixed on Candy, but I addressed the manager as if he worked for me. Bring out your private menu, I instructed. I want one of every dish on it. And open 2 bottles of your best Hennessy parody. Without a word, Thompson simply gave a slight nod, turned, and exited. The room fell into a dead silence. Even Candy stared, wide-eyed, for a moment before she started roaring with laughter. Lucas, I told you that you were a poser, and you still won't admit it? She was laughing so hard that tears streamed down her face, and she wiped them away as she continued to taunt me. My fiancé and I have been here at least a dozen times, and I've never heard of a private menu. Do you ever think before you open your mouth and spout these fantasies? At her sneer, all eyes turned back to me. I could feel in the air their eager anticipation. They were waiting for me to fall flat on my face. In their eyes, I was still the same poor kid Candy had callously discarded years ago. Back then, I'd fought with my father about marrying her, and he'd cut me off completely. With no money to my name, I had to take a job as a delivery driver just to get by. But just as I finished working my ass off to pay back every last cent of her $100,000 debt, she turned around and climbed into the bed of an heir named Nathan Carter. That was the moment I finally woke up. I went home, got serious about the family business, and made a silent vow to never see Candy again as long as I lived. Who could have known that I'd not only run into this heartless gold digger at class reunion, but that she'd use the very debt I paid for her as a punchline just to humiliate me in front of everyone all over again. I had cleared her debt, and my reward was having her grind my self-respect into the dirt in public. There was no way I was going to let that stand. Just because you've never seen something doesn't mean it doesn't exist, I said, my voice ice cold. It just means you don't have the status to see it. I suggest you keep your mouth shut now. Otherwise, your face is going to sting a lot more when the food gets here. Lucas, you, Candy started, but before she could finish, the doors swung open again. A procession of servers entered, carrying plates of food so exquisitely prepared they looked like works of art. As everyone stared in shock, the dishes were laid out, covering our entire table. Mr. Thompson stood in the center of the room, presenting 2 limited edition bottles of Hennessy Parody. Our owner has given special instructions, he announced. Tonight, everyone here is to be treated as a distinguished guest. He paused, raising his voice slightly. Therefore, your entire bill for this evening has been waived, courtesy of the owner. I gave a small, internal nod of approval. The owner of the Summit Club was a smart man. Treating the son of Miami's wealthiest man to a lavish dinner was a small price to pay for goodwill. Please thank your owner for his hospitality. I began, starting to offer a polite word of thanks. But Candy cut me off with a dismissive wave. Lucas, who said you could speak? It's obvious the owner is doing this as a favor to my fiancé, Nathan. Who do you think you are to thank him on our behalf? With that, she shoved me aside and strutted over to the general manager. Please, convey our thanks to Mr. Thompson on behalf of my fiancé, she said, raising her glass. I'll drink this first one to him. She drained her glass. As soon as Nathan's schedule clears up, we will be sure to visit and thank Mr. Thompson personally. A bewildered look flashed across the general manager's face. He opened his mouth to explain, but I shot him a look, and he immediately fell silent. I picked up my jacket from the back of my chair, draping it over my arm. I'm heading out, I announced to the room. You all enjoy the meal. Then I looked at the class president. And please, don't invite me to any more reunions like this one. I couldn't stand to be in that room for another second. Candy's whole affected socialite persona was enough to make me sick. I couldn't be bothered to expose her, so I decided to let the favor of the free meal be my final parting gift to her. But just as I walked past her, she suddenly grabbed my arm. Lucas, aren't you forgetting something? Forgetting what? I asked. You haven't paid your share of the bill. I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. Candy, are you serious right now? The manager just said the owner was covering the entire meal. What is there to pay for? Candy laughed, her eyes dripping with disdain. The meal was comped out of respect for my fiancé. What does that have to do with you? Besides, I organized this dinner, so I decide who gets a free ride. She walked over to the bill presenter by the door and tore out the itemized receipt. The total for this table comes to $80,000, she declared. With 20 people, that's $4,000 per person. She waved the bill in my face. I'm covering everyone else, but not you. So, that'll be $4,000. Cash or card? Mr. Thompson quickly stepped forward. Ma'am, the bill for this evening has actually... I held up a hand to stop him, pulling him back behind me. I leaned in close to Candy. Are you really determined to burn this bridge tonight? I asked in a low voice. You want to make this an official rivalry? Is that what this is? She nodded, her tone sharp. Exactly. Considering we used to date, I was going to do you a favor. I was going to let you have a little taste of the good life. She scoffed. But you just had to go and ruin it with your pathetic act. So now, I'm going to teach you a lesson. I'm going to make you realize exactly where you stand in this world. Instead of getting angry, I laughed. You're right, we are different. I know exactly where I stand. The one who's completely clueless here, Candy, is you. My comment sent a fresh wave of whispers through the group. Lucas, are you addicted to this performance? Someone asked with a sneer. What gives you the right to look down on Candy? If you're as loaded as you claim, why would she have ever dumped your broke ass in the first place? Exactly. Candy's fiancé is worth millions, another chimed in. Your entire life savings probably wouldn't even cover the interest in his checking account. He's just a clown living in his own little fantasy, someone else piled on. And hey, if he actually tries to pay up later, nobody lend him a single dime. I licked my lips, my gaze slowly sweeping across every single face in that room. That's all very amusing, I said, my voice calm but crystal clear. But for the record, it's not just Candy I look down on. It's every single one of you. I paused, letting that statement hang in the air and land with its full weight. Because, one and all, you're garbage. I've never been the most sociable person, but at least I understand basic human decency. From the moment I walked in that door, not one of you so-called old friends has asked a single real question about the past or how I've been. All you've done is crowd around Candy and kiss her ass. So tell me, why should I show an ounce of respect to a bunch of shameless snobs? With that, I had made myself the enemy of the entire room. The class president shot to his feet, slamming his hand on the table. He slammed his palm on the table and roared, Lucas, who do you think you are, talking to us like that? Pay your damn bill and get the hell out of here. The chorus of insults grew louder, and the smirk on Candy's face widened. She picked up the bottle of Hennessy Parody and began pouring shots, one after another, until 10 full glasses stood on the table. "Lucas," she cooed, her voice dripping with fake pity. "I know it must be difficult for a delivery guy to come up with for $1,000 just like that. But, seeing as you helped me out in the past, I'll give you a way out. Call it returning the favor." She propped her stiletto-clad foot onto an empty chair next to her and gestured to the 10 shots. "You have 2 choices. 1. Get on your knees, kiss the tip of my shoe, and admit to everyone here that you're nothing but a pathetic poser. 2. You down all 10 of these shots right now, and then you slap yourself across the face 10 times. You do either one of those, and I'll cover your $4,000 tab. How's that for generous?" The room exploded with whistles and applause. Their eyes gleamed with cruel excitement, hungry to watch my humiliation. They were waiting to see me crawl at Candy's feet like a dog, just like I had done 4 years ago. All I wanted was to walk away and leave us both with a shred of dignity. But Candy and her chorus of sycophants just had to push it to the absolute limit. A kept woman, a fake socialite, daring to act this high and mighty. Fine. If they didn't want to listen to reason, I just burned the whole thing down. I slowly scanned every face in the room. 10 minutes, I said coldly. Candy laughed. "What are you talking about, 10 minutes? I ignored her, turning my gaze to the general manager. He glanced at his phone, then bowed slightly. "Mr. Sterling," he said, "I have already notified the owner. He said that he and Mr. Carter will be here within 10 minutes to apologize to you personally." He then added, he also gave me another specific instruction. He said that to compensate you for the disrespect you have been shown, he is prepared to unconditionally transfer the title to the 100-acre property just outside the city into your name. For a split second, the room was silent. Then it erupted in the loudest laughter of the night. "This broke loser has completely lost his mind," someone howled. "Did he just say Candy's fiancé is coming to apologize and give him land? Can you believe this guy?" "Oh, I totally believe him." Another voice dripped with sarcasm. "I mean, Lucas is probably a dead man walking, so we might as well humor him. It's the charitable thing to do." Someone else eagerly added, "I heard about some rich kid who crossed Candy once. Mr. Carter had his arms and legs broken and had him thrown out of Miami. I'm just curious to see how many limbs Lucas will have left by tomorrow morning. Do you really think it would be difficult to crush a pathetic little delivery boy like you?" I rested my chin in my hand, watching her with a detached amusement. "Then what makes you so certain," I began, my voice low but perfectly clear, "that I'm not the powerful man you think you know?" I leaned forward slightly. "Candy, after all these years, do you really still have no idea who I am?" Candy reacted as if I'd told the funniest joke in history, letting out a high-pitched shriek of laughter. You think you're one of the most powerful men in the country. Have you forgotten why I chose Nathan in the first place? It was because you were flat broke. And looking at you now, I can see I made the absolute right call. You're not just poor, you're delusional. Oh, I get it now. You're just bitter because I saw you for the trash you are from day one. That's why you showed up tonight, to try and get some pathetic revenge, right?" She really had an inflated sense of self-worth. I frowned, looking at her like she was a complete idiot. "Your ego is truly something else. To be blunt, you aren't even worth." "Lucas," Candy shouted, cutting me off, her eyes filled with disgust. "You're about to face the consequences, and you still have the nerve to run your mouth." She waved her hand impatiently. "I'm done wasting my time with you. Get on your knees, bow your head to the floor 3 times, and then get out of my sight. We'll pretend we never even knew you." I paused for a second, then chuckled and shook my head. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm still waiting for your fiancé to arrive with my apology. And, of course, the deed to that 100 acres of land." That remark was the last straw for the others at the table. "Candy, this scumbag has no idea how to appreciate your generosity," one of them yelled. "Why are you even wasting your time on him? He insulted Mr. Carter in front of all of us. If we don't put him in his place tonight, he's going to walk out of here thinking he's untouchable. Candy, just give the word, and we'll hold him down for you. We'll make him get on his knees." Of course, her loyal followers wouldn't miss a chance to prove their devotion, all of them urging her to give the order. Candy pressed her lips together, then gave a slow nod. "Anyone who helps," she said, "gets $10,000 from me." Instantly, a few of the bigger guys got to their feet, cracking their knuckles as they prepared to force me to the ground. Seeing that the situation was about to spiral out of control, Mr. Thompson rushed to stand in front of me. I glanced at my phone and held up a single finger. "Fine," I said. "I'll remember all of you. But let me give you a little warning. You have exactly 1 minute left." Candy froze for a second, then a cold, vicious smile spread across her face. "What's that supposed to mean? That in 1 minute, my fiancé is going to walk through that door?" Her face was a mask of contempt. "A worthless piece of trash like you, still trying to act tough. What are you all waiting for?" she snarled. "Get him." At her command, the guys started moving toward me. When I arrived at the entrance, I said, "Your security guard informed me that a delivery boy like myself wasn't fit to enter this establishment. Was that a personal directive from you, Mr. Thompson?" Sweat broke out on Thompson's forehead, his face draining of all color. He spun around and bellowed at his general manager, "Get down there right now and fire every single guard at that entrance." Then he whipped back around to face me, forcing a placating smile. "Mr. Sterling, my men were blind. They failed to recognize you. I beg you, be the bigger man and overlook their ignorance. I'll drink 3 glasses right now to atone." I put a hand on his arm, stopping him from raising the glass, and shook my head gently. "I just think that you and your staff should learn not to judge people by the clothes they wear, because you never know who you're dealing with. The delivery boy you turn away at the door might just be the son of the wealthiest man in the country, right?" Thompson nodded vigorously, his face a mask of subservience. Yes, you are absolutely correct, sir." I gestured for him to step aside, my eyes landing on Nathan Carter. "Well, if it isn't the renowned Mr. Carter," I said casually. "Your fiancé was just telling us all about your incredibly close relationship with the heir to the Apex Group. Is that right?" Nathan opened his mouth to speak, but before a word could come out, Candy shrieked, "Lucas, you must have a death wish. My fiancé is standing right here, and you have the audacity to just sit there? Get on your knees right now, and—" Her words were cut short by the sharp crack of a slap echoing through the room. The blow had landed squarely across Candy's face. "Nah, Nathan, why did you hit me?" she shrieked in disbelief, clutching her stinging, crimson cheek. "He was the one who started it. That loser was being disrespectful. Everything I did was to defend your honor. You can ask them if you don't believe me." Her voice was a cocktail of panic and indignation. Hearing Candy shift the blame, the other classmates immediately jumped in to back her up. "Candy's right, Mr. Carter," one of them said quickly. "This broke jerk is the one who started all the trouble. He was saying you were nothing compared to him," another added. "We were just helping Candy teach him a little respect." "That's right, Mr. Carter. A delivery boy disrespecting you and Candy like that. You can't let him get away with it." Nathan's voice boomed through the room. "Enough. All of you shut your mouths." At his roar, the room fell so silent you could hear a pin drop. The air became thick and heavy. I remained right where I was, one leg crossed over the other, tapping my fingers idly on the table. "Quite the dramatic entrance, Carter," I said with a lazy smile. "You certainly know how to command a room. Forgive me for not getting up." The color drained from Nathan's face. He quickly bowed low, his posture the very picture of humility. "Mr. Sterling, please, you honor me far too much. I wouldn't dare expect you to stand." Mr. Thompson explained the situation to me on the way over, he continued. "In addition to the 100 acres of land, please allow me to offer $1 million in cash as a formal apology. I hope it can begin to make up for the unpleasantness this misunderstanding has caused you." I had to admit, Nathan was leagues smarter than anyone else in that room. At least he knew how to read the situation and when to cut his losses. Too bad for him. I had no intention of letting anyone off the hook tonight. I snapped my fingers, and Thompson immediately stepped forward to light a cigar for me. I took a slow drag, exhaling a thin stream of smoke. A cool, thin smile played on my lips. "$1 million is too much," I said. 80,000 will be enough. I paused for a beat, but I want it in cash. Nathan froze for a second before immediately sending one of his men downstairs to his car. Moments later, a tall associate entered carrying a heavy briefcase. With a sharp click, he opened it on the table in front of me, revealing 80 pristine bundles of $100 bills. I picked up one of the stacks, flicking the edge of the bills with my thumb. Then I beckoned to the club's owner. Mr. Thompson, I was just told that this Imperial suite was reserved especially for Mr. Carter. Is that true? I riffled the edge of the stack of cash. So, does this mean you're planning to cut ties with the Apex Group? Going independent, are you? As I finished speaking, I tossed the stack of bills, and it slapped sharply against Thompson's face. The crisp edge of a new bill left a thin, red line across his cheek. He didn't even seem to feel it. Instead, he dropped to his knees with a thud. Mr. Sterling, you've completely misunderstood. I would never dare to even think such a thing. This Imperial suite was prepared exclusively for you, from the very beginning. No one else is worthy to set foot inside. Just tell me who's been spreading these disgusting rumors, and I will personally deal with them this instant. I smiled and gestured toward Candy, my voice laced with amusement. Oh, really? Because Miss Evans here was just telling everyone that Mr. Carter was the real guest of honor. She said this suite, the private menu, the comped meal, it was all done as a special favor for him. I was just sitting here thinking, I didn't realize Mr. Carter's VIP status was high enough to supersede mine. The color drained from the faces of Candy and all her followers. It was finally dawning on them that I wasn't the broke delivery guy they'd imagined. The room plunged back into a dead silence, no one daring to utter a sound. After what felt like an eternity, Candy was the one who finally broke it, her voice strained. Lucas, so what if you know the owner of this club? Don't think that makes you invincible. And don't you forget, my fiancé's friend is the future heir to the Apex Group. She lifted her chin, speaking as if she were granting a royal pardon. Since the owner here seems to have your back, I'll let this slide, just for tonight. But don't you dare think. But I have no intention of letting you off the hook, I said, cutting her off. I slowly rose and walked over to her, looking down from my full height. You still don't have a clue what's really happening here, do you? This isn't about a class reunion anymore. This is about the Carter family openly provoking the Sterling family. You think the Carters are so powerful? Why don't you ask your fiancé right there if he dares to repeat that to my face? Nathan, who was already frozen in terror, flinched as if he'd been shocked the moment my gaze fell on him. In the next instant, he kicked Candy, sending her sprawling to the floor. You stupid woman, he screamed, his voice raw with panic. Are you trying to get us all killed? Get on your knees and apologize to Mr. Sterling this instant. If you don't, it won't just be you who's ruined. My entire family, everything we have in Miami, will be destroyed because of you. Slapped and then kicked, Candy finally broke, her humiliation turning into a hysterical scream. Nathan, who is he? Why are you so terrified of him just because he's my broke ex-boyfriend? She struggled back to her feet. Me? Kneel to him? Never. I'd like to see him try to do anything to me. Does he really think he has what it takes to ruin both of our families? The words had barely left her mouth when Thompson let out a short, harsh laugh. Mrs. Carter, it seems you still have absolutely no idea who you've insulted here tonight. He paused, then turned to me with a deep, respectful bow. This, he announced, his voice ringing through the silent room, is Lucas Sterling, the one and only son of Liam Sterling, the wealthiest man in Miami. Thompson let the name hang in the air before turning back to Candy. So you tell me, if the Sterling family decided they wanted to eradicate the Carter family, root and stem, would that be a difficult task? The sentence hit the room like a bomb blast, leaving everyone's ears ringing. It was a full 5 minutes before the class president finally spoke, his voice trembling. He's really the son of the richest man in the state? We're done for. We're all done for. Candy, still slumped on the floor, was as pale as a sheet, her nails digging so hard in her palms they nearly drew blood. She could never, in her wildest dreams, have imagined it. The man she had played for a fool and thrown away like trash was the sole heir to the country's greatest fortune. For a fleeting moment, a look of profound regret and loss washed over her face. I, however, felt nothing. I just watched her impassively. What is it? Finally realize you picked the wrong person to mess with? Are you scared now? My voice was quiet, but it was laced with ice. I'm sorry. It's too late. You, and every single person in this room, I said evenly. No one is leaving tonight. My words threw them into a panic, and they immediately started scrambling to absolve themselves of any blame. Lucas, no, Mr. Sterling, the class president stammered. It was Candy. She paid me $3,000 and insisted that I get you to come tonight. I had nothing to do with any of this. I swear. He's right, Mr. Sterling, someone else blurted out. Candy gave us each $100 before you got here and told us to give you a warm welcome. We were just being stupid and greedy. We didn't mean any of it. Mr. Sterling, please, you're a bigger person than us, another begged. Please just let us go. The room, which had been silent moments before, erupted into a chaotic mess of pleading. All because the delivery boy X had suddenly transformed into someone they couldn't possibly afford to cross. The same people who had been so smug and arrogant just minutes ago were now a pack of pathetic, whimpering dogs, begging for forgiveness. It was disgusting, but I wasn't surprised. This is how the world works. When you're powerful, everyone wants to be your friend. When you're weak, everyone thinks they can use you as a doormat. They had taken a simple class reunion and twisted it into a public trial where your net worth determined your guilt. It was pathetic, but they had all forgotten one crucial detail. I have never been the forgiving type. You want me to let this go? I asked. Fine. I slowly dragged a chair over to the doorway, blocking it, and leaned back, fanning myself with a stack of cash. A little while ago, you were all demanding I pay my share of the bill, weren't you? Well, now it's your turn. For $1,000 each. Pay up, and you can walk out that door. They all looked at each other in panic. Mr. Sterling, my mother's in her 80s. She's sick, one person begged. I really don't have that kind of money. Mr. Sterling, I'm getting married. I'm still short on the down payment for my house. Where am I going to get $4,000? Another pleaded. Mr. Sterling, you're a billionaire. This is pocket change to you. For old time's sake, please just let us go. Old time's sake. I tossed the stack of cash onto the table, my voice dropping. Funny, nobody seemed to remember we were classmates a few minutes ago. Did you remember we were classmates when you were all laughing along with Candy? When you deliberately set me up with that truth or dare question? Did you remember our shared history when you were all competing to kick me while I was down, mocking me for being a delivery driver? And just now, when you were about to pin me to the ground to prove your loyalty to her, did it ever cross your minds that we all sat in the same classroom for 3 years? I laughed coldly. And now you want to talk about being classmates? You don't deserve to use that word. My tone shifted as I pointed to the 10 shots still sitting on the table. However, I'm not a completely unreasonable person. Just like the offer Candy made earlier, I'm also willing to cover your share of the bill. I smiled. The terms, however, are exactly the same as hers. I gave Mr. Thompson a slight nod, and he understood immediately. A dozen security guards in black suits filed into the room and formed a line behind me, completely blocking the exit. I leaned back in my chair and took another slow pull from my cigar. So, you can either come up with the $4,000, or you can earn it based on the terms we discussed earlier. But until those debts are settled, no one is taking a single step out of this room. My voice was quiet, but it carried an authority that no one dared to question. The room fell silent once more. Everyone understood. I was here to settle a score, and they knew, deep down, that they had brought this on themselves with their own snobbery and cruelty. After a long, tense silence, the room filled with the sounds of frantic phone calls. People were calling their parents, their siblings, anyone they could think of, desperately trying to scrape together the $4,000 they needed to escape this nightmare. Over the next half hour, about a dozen of them managed to get the money transferred and were allowed to leave. Every single one of them shot me a look of pure hatred on their way out, as if they wanted to tear me apart with their bare hands, vowing they would never see me again. I couldn't have cared less. We weren't in the same world anymore. Given their character, cutting ties with them completely was a blessing. My gaze shifted to the few people who were still left. How much longer are you going to wait? I asked. The club is closing for the night. The class president, who had no money to his name, finally panicked. In his desperation, his eyes landed on Candy, still on the floor, and he scrambled over to her, grabbing her arm. Candy, you have to help us. I organized this whole thing for you. You can't just leave us to deal with this alone. You're the one with money. Please, just cover the $4,000 for us for now. I'll do anything. I'll get on my knees. The last few stragglers crowded around her, begging her to help. Candy was silent for a long moment. Then she clenched her fists and pushed herself to her feet. Lucas, let them go, she said, her voice heavy. I'll pay for them. Now, it was my turn to be stunned. I stared at her, finding it hard to believe. The woman who had dumped me without a second thought for money was now willing to foot the bill for other people? Are you sure? I asked her. With you and the rest of them, that's $30,000. She nodded decisively and pulled a credit card from her designer handbag. I'm sure, she said. They came here with me. If I abandon them now, what would people say about me? I may not be the daughter of the richest man in the country, but a mere $30,000 is nothing to me. Run the card. And in that moment, it all clicked. She wasn't being selfless. She was pathologically obsessed with her image. Her biggest fear wasn't spending $30,000. It was being exposed. She didn't want people to see that she wasn't just a gold digger, but a cheap one who wouldn't even pick up a tab for her friends. I just smiled and shook my head. Breaking up with her was probably the single best decision I had ever made. If I had actually married a woman like that, God only knows what she would have done to the Sterling family name. I gave Thompson a nod. He got the message immediately, opening the door and letting the last few people scamper out. Once they were gone, only 4 of us remained in the room. Candy handed her card to Thompson, shooting me a cold look. There's your money, she said. Can I go now? But as she spoke, the credit card machine emitted a sharp, jarring beep. Transaction failed. Please try again. Thompson tried it 3 more times, each attempt ending with the same result. The look he gave Candy now was one of undisguised disgust. Mrs. Carter, he said, it appears your card has been frozen. The funds cannot be withdrawn. Candy's face tightened, her voice growing shrill. Impossible. I just used it this morning to buy 2 Chanel bags. You must be doing it wrong. She shoved him aside. Let me do it. She grabbed the machine from him and tried to run the card herself. But no matter how many times she tried, no matter the amount she entered, the screen flashed the same 2 words over and over. Transaction failed. Candy's last shred of composure finally shattered. She whipped her head around to glare at Nathan, her voice trembling. Nathan, was it you? Did you freeze my card? Nathan calmly adjusted his tie, his expression unreadable. Yes, he said. Candy completely lost it, lunging at him and grabbing the front of his suit. Why? Why wouldn't you help me? Nathan simply shoved her off, his eyes filled with a deep, weary disgust. Because, he said, his voice terrifyingly calm, I am divorcing you. I sat back, crossing my legs, watching this whole soap opera unfold with a certain amount of satisfaction. Candy crumpled to the floor, her emotions completely unraveling as she shrieked at Nathan. You can't divorce me. I betrayed Lucas for you. And now that I'm in trouble, you're just going to kick me to the curb? Don't you have a conscience? Nathan didn't even bother to look at her. He simply turned back to me and bowed deeply. Mr. Sterling, the compensation we agreed upon will be delivered to your residence tomorrow morning. My actions tonight were not about her, he continued. They were to protect the Carter family. I will have my lawyers draw up the divorce agreement tomorrow. Considering the long-standing business relationship between my father and yours, I beg you to show mercy to my family. As for this woman and the money she owes you, that is no longer my concern. Whatever you decide to do with her is entirely up to you. Now, if there is nothing else, I will take my leave. He didn't give Candy a chance to respond. With another bow in my direction, he turned and walked out of the room. With the main drama over, it was time for me to go. I stood and put on my jacket. As I passed Mr. Thompson, I spoke quietly. Remember, The total was $80,000. She can leave when that amount is paid in full. Candy's head snapped up, her face a mask of confusion. 30,000? Why is it 80,000 now? Because I refunded the money the others paid, I explained. My voice was level. For them, it was a small lesson. For you, this is the final judgment. I gave Candy a small, humorless smile and turned to leave. I had only taken 2 steps before she collapsed, grabbing onto my leg. Lucas, please, you can't do this to me. Where am I supposed to get $80,000? For the sake of what we used to have. Sorry, I said, cutting her off. The past is the past. We have nothing to do with each other anymore. I shook her hand from my leg and walked out of the room without a backward glance. Of course, it was never about the money. It wasn't even about getting revenge for the $100,000 debt. What I could never get over was how she had taken my heart, my sincere feelings for her, and crushed them under her heel. I had loved her so completely, given her everything I had, and to her, I was just a stepping stone into a wealthier world. But tonight, I had finally taught that gold digger a lesson she would never forget. And it would be a lie to say it didn't feel good. A month later, I was heading into a board meeting at the office. As I reached my office, my assistant stopped me. Mr. Sterling, there's a woman here who insists on seeing you. She says she's an old friend, and she's claiming that she's pregnant with your child and that you need to take responsibility. I knew instantly who it was. Candy. Thompson had filled me in on what happened after that night at the club. Candy had spent the entire night on the phone, managing to scrape together only $20,000. She had to sign an IOU for the remaining $60,000, promising to pay it back within a year. But when she returned to Nathan's mansion, she found all of her belongings thrown out on the lawn, along with a set of divorce papers. Nathan had kicked her to the curb. Knowing her, the reason she was here today was painfully obvious. Tell her I'm out of the country, I said, buttoning my suit jacket as I walked toward the conference room. From now on, if she ever comes here again, I'm always unavailable. Yes, Mr. Sterling. Hey, you can't go in there. My assistant's protest was cut short by a commotion behind me. Candy burst past my assistant and threw herself into my arms. Lucas, I've had time to think, and I realize now that you were the one for me all along. Let's get back together, please. I've already signed the divorce papers. I'm a free woman now. A free woman. What a joke. I shoved her off me and brushed at my suit jacket as if she'd contaminated it. Stop dreaming, Candy. Did you really think I wouldn't see right through this? Nathan kicks you out, so now you come running back to me, hoping I'll pay off that $60,000 debt for you? You certainly didn't think I was so great when I was paying off your last debt. You were too busy climbing into Nathan Carter's bed for that. I sneered. But now that you know who my father is, you think you can just waltz back into my life and enjoy the ride? You don't deserve it. Hearing my blunt refusal, the fragile look on Candy's face vanished, replaced by a vicious glint in her eyes. She knew the damsel in distress act was useless on me now. So she switched tactics. Lucas, are you really going to be this cruel? She said through gritted teeth. Fine, we don't have to get back together. But the baby I'm carrying is yours. You have to admit that, and you have to pay child support. Her lips moved as she did the math in her head. $30,000 a year until the child is 18 comes out to $540,000. But since you can afford it, let's just round it up to a nice, even $600,000. I almost laughed out loud. The sheer audacity was stunning. Leaving aside the fact that she was almost certainly not pregnant, the shamelessness of her demand, including rounding up the total, was breathtaking. This woman had absolutely no shame. I leaned in closer. Let me get this straight, I said, my voice low. You dumped me 4 years ago, and now you show up claiming you're pregnant with my child. Does that sound even remotely believable to you? But I'll give you a chance. We will go to a hospital, a real one, and we will get a paternity test. If that child is mine, I won't give you $600,000. I'll give you $6 million. But if it's not only will you not get a cent, but I will sue you for slander and extortion. I looked her straight in the eye. So, do you dare? Her head sank, and she stood there frozen. Of course she didn't dare. It had all been a lie, one last desperate attempt to use whatever feelings I might have had left for her to squeeze some money out of me. Unfortunately for her, she was out of luck. I was no longer the naive boy she could manipulate so easily. Since you don't have the courage to see it through, I said, do me a favor and never bother me again. If you set foot in this building again, I will have you arrested for trespassing. I paused, then added one last thing. And remember this. You weren't with me through the struggle, so don't you dare think you can come back and claim a piece of the success. With that, I walked past her and into the boardroom, not even sparing her a final glance. After that day, it was as if Candy Evans had simply vanished from Miami. 3 years later, I married Olivia, the daughter of another one of the city's prominent families. On our wedding night, she lay in my arms and asked me a question. If Candy hadn't left you when you were at your lowest, she asked, and if she hadn't tricked you into paying off that debt for her, would we have ever met? Would we be married right now? And she was right. If it hadn't been for all that, I probably never would have met her. Back then, I had loved Candy with everything I had, but she was never the right person for me. She was too selfish, so selfish that she could fake a 5-year relationship just to get me to take on her massive debt. She was too obsessed with money, so much so that the moment a wealthier man appeared, she cast aside the person who had always been there for her without a second thought. But the tragic part is, I know that if I could live it all over again, I would probably still fall for her just as hard. And she would still make the exact same choices. The woman I truly wanted, the one I needed, was a partner, a soulmate. Someone who would celebrate with me at my peak and support me at my lowest. Not a cold, calculating woman who only ever loved herself. We were doomed from the start. Seeing my silence, Olivia snuggled closer. What is it? She asked softly. Is it that hard to answer a question about her? I smiled and held her tighter. The truth is, I said, life doesn't give you do-overs. This story serves as a potent validation for anyone who has ever been treated as a stepping stone, a temporary bridge for someone else's ambition. Its true power lies not in the catharsis of revenge, but in its stark illustration of a fundamental divergence in values. It forces us to confront a difficult truth. Some people measure worth in currency and status, while others measure it in loyalty and heart. The painful lesson here is not that we were unworthy, but that we were gambling with a currency the other person never learned to recognize. Thus, the ultimate triumph isn't the public humiliation of a former partner, but the quiet, internal realization that their departure was not a rejection of your worth, but a necessary, albeit brutal, course correction. It is a reminder that the most profound success is building a future on a foundation they were too shallow to help you lay, with someone who understands the incalculable value of the architect.